Hello, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Leandra the TBR0, and I will be flipping through my bullet journal for the last 6 months, so January to June of 2024, and I've done quite a bit. I'm pretty proud of it. I am not gonna lie, I've fallen behind a handful of times, but at this point it is up to date, and that's all we can ask of ourselves, you know what I mean? If you are new, you may not realize that I'm a very simplistic bullet journaler. I have my bullet journal that costs about $20 to $25, my Mildliner 24 pack of markers, which I used last year, and because it's my tried and true, I use it this year as well, and a ruler that cost me less than $1. So if you're looking for a bullet journal on a budget, then this might be a great one to look at because I'm still really proud, really satisfied with how it looks, and that includes my annual spreads. So my first spread is my 2024 reading goals, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job of sticking to them. The one thing I'm worried about is having a third of the books I'm reading this year be from my TBR backlist. That is not the case, but I have read well over 100 books, and I do want to read more of sci-fi and horror. I think those two genres on my goals list have been lacking, and obviously continuing a series, we're all work in progresses, we're doing our best. For my 24 TBRs in 2024, I am impressed I have done as much as I have done. With that said, there obviously are some genres that I'm lacking in, nonfiction and the classic mystery. Who am I? What is going on? And my do not finish list, I'm already at the bottom of that, so I'm going to have to create another one later on in the bullet journal, which I haven't done yet, but I'm game for DNFing way more books in the latter half of 2024. For my pre-orders, all of them have come in except for Holy Terrors. This one's going to be the third book in the Little Thieves series, and it is to be received. It's been rescheduled a couple times, so I'm not really anticipating it coming out this year. I think it's scheduled for 2025, but everything else I've received. I just need to read it. For my books purchased, I'm trying to read every single book that I have purchased in 2024, and I feel as though I'm not doing as bad as I thought. At the moment, I can't remember, but in my last quarter, my second quarter check-in, I think I had a little over a dozen books to read before I have officially read everything I've bought this year, so I'm in good shape. And you will be seeing more content, making sure that I actually hold to my promise to myself and to you all that that's going to happen, because the last thing I want to do is bring any purchased books from 2024 into 2025. If I can pull that off, it's going to be a tradition. Now come a couple spreads that I've been really bad about. My NetGalley and gifted copies. I've actually pulled back a bit on requesting gifted copies and NetGalley ARCs, mainly because I haven't been prioritizing them. Yes, I've received a handful of physical ARCs and gifted books from publishers this year, but I've been really bad about reading them, and so it's not looking good for Leandra, but I'm gonna read them, I promise. And then my favorite spread of all time, my books read in 2024 counter, and you can see I am nearly at 150 books. I still really love that I color code every single month, and I do that throughout my spreads, so every time you see a book kind of mentioned, it usually should be affiliated with that color to have a nice through line and know my statistics. I do that in a couple places, but not the ones I'm showing you now, so I'm a liar. I have my bar graph that is actually coming along really well. I like how it's looking, and it is telling me that I tend to read newer releases. My top release books are 2024, 2023, and 2022. I am less diligent about my genres and my subgenres. I just kind of track those for fun. I don't know. I'm reading a lot of genre blends this year, which is making that difficult, but my bar graph has been very enlightening, and I think it's going to become a staple in my bullet journal content in following years. I really like the way it looks, and I love how it very clearly tells me what years I'm gravitating towards without even meaning to. Then I have a couple other spreads that I'm really happy I have. So I've got my acquired reads telling me basically where every book is coming from. Is it come from the library, from my TBR backlist? Is it a purchased book from 2024? I also am checking on reading format, and it has been a godsend, including my immersion reads option, because that was really messing with me last year when I didn't include that. And my new to me authors, I'm gonna need another spread for that one too, because it is filling up way faster than I should have known, but it's fine. And then my series tracker, which I think I'm doing pretty good. You can see that I am at least continuing a handful of series this year, but of course, none of us are surprised. I have started a handful of series as well. And then my monthly stats, that has been a really fun way of reflecting on every single month from a distance, especially when it comes to looking at my average ratings. And I wish they were higher. And I think that's an indicative situation of that I should be DNFing more. Because if I'm not DNFing books I'm not vibing with, it's gonna lower my overall average rating. I also need to be better about my physical TBR books. Then we have my head-to-head, and I'm halfway through filling it out, as you can see. It's pretty exciting to see the variety of books that I have been loving. This is pretty much me providing an award for every single book I've read, that's my favorite book per month, and then they're gonna have a face-off by the end of the year. Oh no, and then here's another kind of sad story. I started off with Bookemon really strong, and I want to say it might have been March, April where I fell off, and I don't know, eventually I might go through to see just what Bookemon I've collected, but it's not going to be a priority for me just because I think it's gone on too far. Now, this is my monthly spread, and it is a staple. I have a calendar, and I assign a color to each book I pick up, and I pretty much mark each day what books I read that day. It's a great way for me to know how long I've taken to read a certain book, and then I can easily transfer that to Goodreads and Storygraph when I eventually update them. Now, have I updated them at all this year? No. Goodreads says I've read 4 books, and you know that I've read over 140, so oops, my bad. And now I'm showing my spreads for when I was hosting TBR-athon in January, and yes, I did every single worksheet that I provided you all, and it was super fun. I plan on having 5 next year as well. I just feel like that's a good number, and it allows for me to provide a spreadsheet that hopefully encompasses every type of reader out there, whether you want a bit of competition, want a bit of challenge, or you just want to have a good time and you want to participate. Now we're getting into my monthly spreads, and it's very fun that this is my first spread, especially because it's so big. I love that I really made the tree the focal point of this spread, and there is a cat in the book, hence why I had the cat in the tree. It's a pivotal kind of meet cute moment that I wanted to showcase for this book, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and this was kind of the beginning of the end of romances for me. I'm not very much in my romance era, but it's fine. Then we have Capture the Sun and Dead Voices. You can see, if you have read any of these books, that a lot of times I try to provide some type of illustration that marks a pivotal moment, item, scene of some sort within the books, or just the cover. So for Capture the Sun, that is directly from the cover of that book. Meanwhile, Dead Voices highlights the 3 main characters and the interesting relationship they had with a mirror that was over the fireplace, and it was very important to the book. I also have some really important information for me. This has changed every single year of what I want to know about these books. So author, genre, publication year, and my rating system, which is now quarter-star rating. So that's why you see a bit of the bar filling up, and it allows me to see exactly what quarter I'm at. For Emily Wilde and A Song for the Wild Build, I just think these are very cozy vibes books, and I'm very glad that they are sitting next to each other. That doesn't always happen, but we have Emily Wilde's journal and Moss Cap and the T representing sibling decks. That's a very cozy 2 spreads. Then we get a bit darker. We have In the Woods and The September House, and that just goes to show you that this is just chance. I don't purposely set up these reviews to match them. I just do it in order of reading. So I'm very fortunate that, at least for January, the vibe matched. I love the trees that I included. That one was definitely a trust the process situation. And then The Door, that's one of my favorite spreads just because of how it looks. and If We Were Villains, a book I didn't like, and I'm beginning to wonder if I put less effort into trying to come up with a great illustration to pair with my review spread when it's a book I don't like. Obviously, it still pairs well because If We Were Villains is a Shakespearean tragedy placed in a modern setting. Even though I didn't like it, I still think that the curtain is very fitting. Meanwhile, my January superlatives, that's something I do every single month as well, just to show a little bit of love, because even if I don't provide a spread for every single book, I still want to highlight them in some way. You can see my consistency with my monthly spreads. February, I do the same format, and it actually simplifies things very well. So if you're someone who's new to bullet journaling or you haven't bullet journaled before, I recommend keep things simple, keep things consistent, and then it lessens the burden for you as you're trying to keep up with it, whether it be a daily kind of situation, a weekly one, or if you're someone who only wants to update your bullet journal once a month. That's totally fine. But consistency, I think, simplifies things. I ended up including this year spreads for the readathons I did. I did that my first year, then I abandoned it last year, and now this year it's back. So that's why you're going to be seeing certain readathons highlighted too. For my mimicking of known successes, this one I'm pretty proud of how my Jupiter turned out. It was touch and go. I'm just sad that that book wasn't as well loved by me as it is by others. And then we have two really fun spreads. For the Emily Wilde book 2, there's a great kind of fox-like fairy, and so I just decided to create a fox that was definitely an homage to a certain scene when it was running through the rain. That was gorgeous. Danny and I loved it so much that I had to include it. And then Midnight on Beacon Street has a television because it had a lot of nods to horror in the 90s and earlier, and I loved that. To prove that I definitely don't purposely put books next to each other on spreads, you can see I loved Godkiller and I really was not impressed by Suburban Hell, but because I read one after the other, this is why the spreads are set up the way they are. Now, do I love the way both spreads turned out? Yes, I think they complement each other really well, and I like how they are actually the bottom of both pages. I try to switch it up sometimes, but those just worked out really well, and I like how they filled up the bottom for both spreads. Then with Once Upon a Murder, this comes directly from the cover. I swear, if you're someone who's nervous about drawing, nervous about sketching, having some type of reference, whether it be from the internet or from the cover, I swear it does wonders, especially because I'm not someone who is trained in artistry. I recall back in high school taking art classes, but then it ended there. So trust me, it's good to have a reference, and don't be hard on yourself as well, because this is my third bullet journal, and while it's not fantastic, it's not the bee's knees, it's definitely way better and way more organized than my first ever bullet journal. So if you want some, good feelings about yourself before you get into it, go back to some of my older bullet journals and you'll see that I've grown, and it's been worth the process for it. Past Crimes is another one that was directly from the cover, and oh my goodness, I am so enamored with my illustration of that dog. There is this really lovely service dog named Gimlet in The Spare Man, and so I decided to draw the little puppy herself and then also include the cocktail that is the Gimlet, that she's named after. And oh my gosh, it's one of my favorites. It is so sweet. Meanwhile, I kept it really simple with Welcome to Night Vale because I wasn't really sure what to draw, but the flamingos are quite important, so I decided to include those. Another spread that I absolutely love. When it comes to The Lost World, the only regret I have is that it's paired with Goddess of Filth, and I'm just not as impressed by my drawing of the candles, so it's kind of sad to have them paired next to each other, but that's okay, because I really enjoyed both books, and I'm really happy with the vines and just the greenery that is The Lost World. I actually lean on that quite a bit. We saw that in, what was it? Get a Life Chloe Brown obviously had a tree. In the Woods has a bunch of trees, and now The Lost World, and these aren't the last spreads that you'll see. point in question. We have A Walk in the Woods, which I created an entire kind of trail scene. I was doing my best to encompass the Appalachian Trail, which A Walk in the Woods is all about, and I think I did a pretty good job just by creating random things. This one wasn't based on reference. I just was doing my best, and it's all right. Now, Lavender House, I am obsessed with the lavender I drew. That lavender is right from reference. And I was really nervous because I drew it just with my colored markers, and then I went in with a fine black tip marker, and it ended up working out because that, again, gotta trust the process. And then The Tainted Cup, a book I loved, and I was able to highlight it with the American covers kind of focal point image, this cup with these kind of deathly plants coming out of it, and I really like the color scheme for that one as well. And we're already in April. It's kind of crazy how quickly this year has gone in general, and that also speaks to the fact that we should take our time and not put too much pressure on ourselves when we're doing bullet journals like this. Make it as simplistic as you need it to be, especially because the year does go by so quickly, and there have been times where I've had to catch up with months of reviews, and Soulless was one of them. I left Soulless for a couple months before I finally wrote my review and finally drew the image, which is the parasol that you see on the cover, because it's the Parasol Protectorate series, and it is directly from the cover. I was zooming in, making sure I could draw it as perfectly as possible, and that one took me a long time. I told you there would be more nature scenes, and one of them is a far more drier climate in the dry, because it was in a rural community in Australia. The truck, the pickup truck, or as they say, ute, is a very important kind of scene. Something is found there that is, very dark and sinister. And then Green Fuse Burning is an eco horror, so of course I had to include trees for that one as well. Here we have an interesting image in which I had to have two spreads next to each other, and their illustrations are placed in the same place for each. Like I said, I tried to kind of switch things up, but it just worked out that way, that it made sense to have them both on the left-hand side. And My Murder, that one I was so nervous about, especially when I started drawing that face, but it turned out pretty well, and it is, again, just directly from the cover. And the theme continues, because the Manor House was also directly from the cover as well. I'm not sure if it's the same cover as with the British edition, but with the American one, there are these really kind of gorgeous, old-fashioned looking gates that I wanted to utilize, and that one surprised me. It was a mystery thriller that I absolutely just really enjoyed in the end. It kind of won me over. At the beginning, I thought it was a bit boring, and then I was really fascinated by the development of it, and it's one of the few thrillers I can say that I really enjoyed, and I recommend if you're okay with slow books and multiple POVs. And then we have May, a much slower month, arguably, compared to the month coming, which is going to be June. And I ended up obviously starting with a book I didn't like, and that is Flawless. But you know what? I gave my all. I drew that milk carton to the best of my ability. What I should have done is make it a bit classic and have like a missing person on one of the panels, but I didn't think to do it. And then I kind of came out of nowhere with these two very simple but lovely illustrations. I'm really proud of them, because one of them I was really nervous about, and that was the wasp, but the other one I wasn't sure how the writing on the glass would look. For the Glass Hotel, there was this really creepy writing that just kind of came out of nowhere at the hotel, and it made everyone kind of on edge, so I really wanted to include that. And then the wasps are a certain kind of alien race when it comes to Station Eternity. We had another perfect pairing for these two books just because I gave them both 5 stars, and they're both cozy fantasy. That is a subgenre within fantasy that I've learned I really enjoy. Does it always work for me? No, but Legends and Lattes and Small Miracles were so lovely, especially Small Miracles. That is one of my favorite books of the year, and oh no, here we are with the trash that is Heartless. I honestly, when it came to this spread, I just did not have the energy. I refused to write an entire review because I kind of made the header before I finally came back and, started writing these reviews. And the time in between, I was exhausted. I had already made my video saying how terrible the Chestnut Springs series is, even though it's weirdly well loved by everyone, that I was like, I've given it too much time already. I'm just going to say what it is, and it is trash. Then we have June, and you can see that the bottom, this is where I list all of the books and give them a color that is associated with it. So when I start circling per day, and it was mayhem. I actually had to also dedicate a handful of spreads just to the Amazing Readathon alone, because there were just so many elements to it as a host. I wanted to just really kind of dedicate as much time and space to the Amazing Readathon because I had so much time. I had obviously that one section that highlighted all of my city books, but then I had my sightseeing books and made sure to log them per leg. And then I also had my face-off books, which was a weekend that was 48 hours of us just reading as much as we could possible, and I'm really happy with how they turned out. I actually ended up logging all of these spreads after June ended, so that's also important to know. You can always be strategic and just leave space to go back and then make the spreads you want to make them once you're ready to do so. And then you can see in June, I honestly stopped making illustrations, and that just shows that you are allowed to adapt. You're allowed to change things in your bullet journal when the need arises. I was kind of exhausted and waited to write all of my reviews after June, and I couldn't find the energy to draw anything, except for with Bunnicula. I did take the time to draw Harold and Chester and Bunnicula just because they're super cute, but everything else I ended up just writing out my thoughts, filling up the entire page with my thoughts, and that's okay. Will I continue this trend moving forward into the second half of the year? No. My plan is to return to drawing one item or object of some sort that is a nod to the book, to its cover, to its characters in coming months. But for these ones, I just decided not to, and that's totally fine. It speaks to how busy my life was in June, and it also gave me more space to talk about the books I loved, including Diavola and Against the Darkness, two of my favorite books of the year at this point, because they both were 5 stars, and they came to me at the right time. I honestly enjoyed them so much, and they're very different books too. One of them was horror, and the other one was a YA paranormal, last book in the series. I know, who am I? But it honestly is now going to be one of my favorite series of all time because it was so fun. And then we've got The Last Tapai, my last book of this, 6-month spread. And again, just a great book in general. 3rd book in a series, so not surprised I loved it. And my final superlative spread as well. And those are my 6 months. Honestly, I am shocked that I've read as many books as I have. I'm shocked that I have taken the time to create as many spreads as I have. What I'm doing now is I'm actually looking at each month individually and trying to figure out what my favorite is per month. Capture the Sun, that one I'm actually really impressed with. That one took me quite a bit of time, and it matches the cover really well. Obviously, I've got a sweet spot for A Sum for the Wild Built, mainly because those mushrooms are gorgeous. Those in the woods trees took me a long time, but honestly, when it really comes down to what my favorite book was, or at least what my favorite spread was, The September House, I'm really proud of that door and the little writings around it. Then when it comes to February, we're not surprised. It is going to be my illustration of Skediketh. Like, Skedi is one of my favorite characters of all time at this point, and I'm really, really happy with how it turned out. So that is my favorite spread for February. So we have a favorite spread for a horror book in January, a favorite spread for a fantasy in February, which in itself just proves how different my reading tastes are this year. Like, it's very interesting how that works out. I've got a sweet spot for The Spare Man. Gimlet just turned out so adorable, and it's not the first time I've drawn a West Highland Terrier in my spreads, and that one's definitely the best so far. But it has to go to, honestly, Tainted Cup's great too. I do love that one, but in the end, it's got to go to that Lavender, because it honestly looks so much better than I thought it was going to, and I'm just really pleased with the look of it. And that book was also great. A historical mystery. Soulless, The Dry, The Manor House, My Murder. Oh my gosh. Yeah, honestly, that one looks so similar to the cover, more than I expected. The pickup truck turned out well too, but the one that took me the most time was the parasol for Soulless. Like, that took me a lot of time to get the flowers right and the etching, so that one's gonna win for that one. And that one is a paranormal mystery romance, historical fiction as well. It's a doozy, and I loved it dearly. So Small Miracles, I did put a little bit of notes in there for Gadriel, and said Gadriel's chocolate, tempt yourself, because Gadriel is the fallen angel of small temptations or petty temptations. Meanwhile, I'm also considering Station Eternity's Wasp. I'm considering, that one's great for the Glass Hotel. I like the simplicity of the fern and also the shading of it to show that there's some darkness, there's some type of light source. So that one worked out. And that one is a contemporary fiction. Genuinely, it's kind of crazy to think of the number of genres I read. Meanwhile, in June, the only illustration I did was this threesome, and I wish I did better for Chester, but Harold turned out really well. And you know what? That's it. That is the end of this video, and I hope you enjoyed. Let me know in the comments what your favorite spread was, or if you have any of your own tips, tricks, your own bullet journal content that you want to share. And I really do hope to see you all in the next one. Thanks, friends, and thanks to my Manor guests. You all are amazing, and I hope you survive the next coming weeks, the next coming months, because there is a murderer among us. I can promise you that. All right, bye, friends.